Last month, we interviewed Missouri State Rep Justin Hill about his tales while he was in the DEA. He told us a bunch of stories, and during this time, since editing or release or whatever terminology, he has announced his resignation and to hang with his family and more and stuff, and moved to Florida. Looks like kind of like a retirement thing, but a working retirement, I guess. So I'd like to say thank you for your service for Missouri, and God bless you, your family, and the great state of Missouri.
Republican Anthony Rogers has no previous political experience. Rogers, a comedian, is well known for a podcast called The Anthony Rogers Show.
Hey man, this is Tommy Chong, and right now you're listening to The Anthony Rogers Show.
Hey all you cool cats and kittens, it's Carol Baskin, and you are listening to The Anthony Rogers Show.
Hey y'all, this is Kevin from Candlebox. You are listening to the funny man, Anthony Rogers.
Hey, my name is Alex Sulkin, writer of Ted and Family Guy, and you're listening to The Anthony Rogers Show. Lucky you.
Hey, how are you doing? Without sponsors like Delta Extracts, this show, well, wouldn't exist. They have these 2-gram vape pens that basically, it's like smoking weed or marijuana or whatever without the federal crime because it's legal. So a little bit of the paranoia goes away. Good product, Delta Extracts. Check out their link in the description and buy some stuff, support the sponsors. Welcome back to the greatest show in the entire universe. And today we have Missouri State Rep Justin Hill, formerly of the DEA. We're going to talk about some of that today. Crazy.
Yeah, crazy is exactly it.
So, okay, before we had some good stuff before we recorded. So, like, what were you saying? So, how did this all what was that?
So, Anthony, I was a policeman. I was a uniformed policeman since 2001. I graduated the police academy, and all I ever wanted to do was be undercover. I just thought it was the coolest thing to get into the minds of people, regardless of what the crime was. I wanted to get into the minds of those people and make them think I wasn't the police. I just thought that was so cool. It took me 4 years as a patrolman to actually get to the position where I was invited to take the assignment to go undercover. And I was undercover in the St. Louis region for, I guess, 2 years before I got noticed by the DEA. They came and scooped me up. So I was a sworn, DEA agent. They call them task force officers, right? So basically you swear an oath and you get brought into their fold and you start doing federal investigations. And man, it was a great time. It was so eye-opening. And that's actually one of the reasons I actually entered politics, because I learned how powerful the government was whenever I was working there. But there's a lot of stories. What do you want to hear?
No, that's crazy. So, okay, so you were basically a policeman, just for in Missouri, basically, and then they picked you up from there?
Yeah, so I was
That's cool.
a policeman in the city of O'Fallon. It's 80,000 people, and
that's where I'm from. That's hilarious. That's like my hometown. That's hilarious.
Yeah. You might not have known me then, though. I mean,
I hope not.
I was.
I was joking. No, that's crazy. So okay, so you're basically a police officer there, and then the government is scoops in. They're like, okay, we got some do they have missions kind of, or I've never been in your situation, so I don't know how dumb I
So
sound.
my job locally,
Seriously.
yeah. So my job locally when I was undercover, basically used informants to buy up the chain, right? I wasn't interested in people with weed or even just one hit of ecstasy or anything like that. I wanted to get to the guy that could sell me a lot of quantity, right? Because that's where you're with the major players. And so we would use informants. We'd do 2 or 3 buys. And then we would, the overt guys that, didn't have to hide their face. They would actually go show up and jump out on the guy or gal that was selling me and say, hey, you've been selling to an undercover. Do you want to work it off? Do you want to join us and introduce us to your guy?
Dude, that's
and most people would. Honestly, most people
they're
would
scared, don't want to go to jail. No, I can see that. I can see.
Yeah, because by the time they're talking to us, they've got 3 felony charges that they could go to jail for.
Yeah. See, it makes me think the government hates competition because they go after the competitors. They go after they got the people that make actual money. I think that is interesting. So I did notice that they never went after like the deadbeat aspect of it, or they get them to
Well,
tell
yeah,
them.
and yeah, it is about money. Let me tell you, because when I did ultimately go to the DEA, I learned that it was the mission of that administrator at the time. The administrator I worked for, that's the person in DC, right, that runs all the. It was Asa Hutchinson at that time, and that is the current governor of Arkansas.
That's crazy.
So Asa, the mission then was, we want to seize assets. That's how we're going to hurt drug trafficking organizations. We want to tax them. Essentially, that's a tax. When you seize assets, it's a tax, right? Well, people operating in the black market, they don't pay taxes, right? So it's almost incentivizes keeping drugs illegal, because that's the only way you can collect a tax on drugs. I mean, if people can grow it in their home, and they're self-medicating or whatnot, you can't really tax that. You can't really enforce it. But man, it's easy to keep it illegal and then steal someone's boat, mansion, island in the Caribbean, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's crazy. So did you see a lot of that?
Yeah. So when I went to DEA, and here's a funny story. My first wiretap. So I did wiretap investigations also at the DEA. And, that's whenever you get enough evidence that someone's using a phone to basically run a drug trafficking organization, that, a judge says, okay, you can listen to the conversations for 30 days. And then in 30 days, you have to give us an update. If you're getting more intelligence, then you can re-up it for another 30 days, And every phone call you listen to, you got to, it has to be relative to a crime. You can't listen to every phone call. If the first 10 seconds or whatever, isn't relative to the crime, you got to hang up, And then you can check in maybe 30 seconds later or a minute later. Now, these are, I haven't paid attention to any court cases in the last, 5 to 10 years. I mean, this is how it was back then. Some things might have changed, but my first wiretap, it was a big deal because it was a young white guy, cocaine dealer, and literally everybody was shocked that my target was a young white guy, cocaine dealer at DEA, and so they were waiting to hear my first phone call on my wiretap, and they were. I mean, the first phone call, it went like this. The bad guy calls his brother, and his brother says, "Hey, did you hear they're putting Barack Obama on Mount Rushmore?" And he goes, "No, you got to be kidding me." He goes, "Yeah, but they ran into a problem. They couldn't find a piece of charcoal big enough." So they literally, the first call I had was a racist joke, and all my buddies, all my partners around me, they're friends, they're black guys. They were just rolling. So that it was epic, and I'm pretty sure the guys in DA still tell that story. So that's indicative of St. Louis, right?
That's crazy. So so what was your exact position in all this? What was your exact role in there?
My role changed. So I did. So if they needed an undercover, I would do it because DEA agents weren't allowed to. It's literally in their policy. They can't buy undercover. So they'd use, guy with experience, a task force officer that's technically a employee of the police department. Then I would do wiretaps, right? If it was my case, I would sit and listen on the phone. I would run the investigation. I might send some guys out on the street to do surveillance. If he makes a call and says, "Hey, I'm coming, to pick up whatever," I'll call my guys and say, "Hey, he's going to make a pickup. Go get him on surveillance. We take photographs," stuff like that. I would also do interdiction. So if there's a load of, marijuana or coming up Highway 44 that was stopped, I would respond. And I would interview the driver, and I would try to convince them to do a controlled delivery where we would deliver it to the person taking delivery, and then we'd take the person down.
When you sorry, you covered so much shit, I would break it down a little bit. When you go undercover, that's basically, that seems like acting or something. So do you buddy up with these people? You look at their social media, how do you kind of buddy up with these people?
So this was when social media wasn't that big, right? It was 2005. Okay. I think I was using MySpace. No one knew what MySpace was, and I would always look on MySpace because dudes that are in the business of, you know, slinging cocaine or whatnot, they all think they're rap stars, you know, and so they go on
flashing money and stuff.
Yeah, they go on MySpace, flash money, show us pictures of their cars and stuff like that. And that, I mean, that was before Facebook or any others was kind of a big deal. But yeah, social media is a huge tool.
Yeah, I feel like I posted like a bunch of like stacks of like fake money one time that looked like hundreds of thousands of dollars. I feel like a couple of people were like checking out a bunch of suspect people added me on Instagram like after that. Like I think they're probably looking for shit like that one is just a joke. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it is funny how really dumb we are.
It's humans, man. I think both sides. I think, you know.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Like one side just like you're saying these guys are just posting their profits on the fucking internet. It's hilarious. Like I mean, it's just as bad. No, it's humans, man. It's ego. It's everything, you know.
But back then, the job was it was acting, because here you got somebody that is this being brought, a stranger is being brought to them by somebody that they sell drugs to. Right. And so I have to convince them I'm not the police, because the nature of what they're doing anyway. Right. They're always going to be skeptical. Am I selling to the police?
And you look like the police. Like if I was like a coke lord guy or whatever, I'd be like, that guy's a cop.
Yeah. And I still can't get rid of that. It's funny. Like someone even called me out yesterday. I haven't been a policeman for 8 years.
That's crazy.
It's just, I guess, I did it so long, I kind of carry that vibe, I guess. But
I'd say so, dude. That's crazy. They even would you dress different, or like how do you like just meet these people?
This what's so funny is because when I first went undercover, I went off to school in Nebraska. It's not always in Nebraska, but they move it around the country. This time it was in Nebraska. And I got my ear pierced, and I grew out my hair. I grew out a long goatee. Went and bought a bunch of shitty clothes. And I get back and I start trying to buy some little stuff just to kind of develop some informants. I'm buying weed. I don't care.
Like get in the game somehow. Yeah, you're like, what do you got? Like
right. But I'm 6'4", and I had a long ass goatee. I got shitty clothes and I got an earring in. I was scaring these kids essentially that were trying to sell me dope. I couldn't buy it because I was so scary. So after about 6 months, I cleaned it up. I started wearing, better clothes. I trimmed the goatee, I cut my hair, and it was game on, man. And I found my niche. I bought mostly cocaine and ecstasy. Back then it was huge.
Crazy.
And then after the cocaine ecstasy wave, it was like crack cocaine. And then I ended up finishing up on heroin. Heroin was just going crazy on my way out. Yeah. That and fentanyl. So it just kind of, you change with the time, you change the look with the crowd. I mean, there was one time I was buying from some Hispanics, so I would go buy some clothes that would fit in with that kind of look, and did pretty good.
That's hilarious. Where would you meet? You just meet these people out random, like you're like at a bar or something, or like what?
Sometimes you go do that. Not as often as getting introduced, right?
Okay. So you meet like one person and you just ride that out, basically.
Yeah, like if we get charged on somebody, I'd call, you have to manage them like a client, I'd call them like 3 times a week, and sorry, I had to shut that phone off. Call them 3 times a week saying, hey, you got 2 more people you got to introduce me to, and just constantly hound them. And then once they introduced me to somebody, a lot of times you had 2 informants, one informant introduced you to the other, but they don't know you're working together.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I heard a lot of stories like that. Like there'd be like feds all pulling guns on each other in places. Like I heard like in just certain investigations, I heard about that, and that's crazy to think about. Like how everybody's just. I mean, that's how strong the government is. They have the most funding. I mean, it makes sense,
Yeah, it wasn't as much funding though. It was more holding that stick. Nobody wants to go to jail, and it's easier to put someone else in the hot seat, right?
Yeah, so they just keep telling all the way up the line, basically. And then you find somebody, you're like, okay, this guy's big enough. Like,
so here's something though that's wild. Is one time we were doing a case with some big Mexican drug trafficking organizations, and we were so high up locally that the next step was outside the country, right? And And me, I wouldn't go outside the country. They would use other agents to go outside the country, but you'd have to run it by like the intelligence gathering folks. And there was on one occasion where we were so high, the Department of State told an agent, "No, you guys are done. Good job." So, yeah, I mean, it's wild when you cross borders. Everything changes, man. It's just a different set of rules.
Yeah, I was finding out like in a lot of like instances, like the higher up like government organizations were actually trafficking drugs. So it's like CIA like bases and stuff were using for like humans and like drugs and stuff, which is like would get people killed for saying in the 90s, like like straight.
Yeah.
Like if you said that in 1990, you got killed. But I think like so you had like I mean same with the FBI with the pedophile rings. You had like all those guys like look at all these symbols and then it finds out it's their bosses. Like like basically you had with all that like Pizzagate stuff, you know.
Yeah, it's I've been out for a while though, so I wish I knew how it was now. You know,
the world's changed so much in 8 years too. Yeah,
dude, so much has changed. I used to do bulk currency seizures. I would get we would seize $2 million in cash on Interstate 70.
That's
right?
Crazy.
And then which is about 80 pounds, by the way. I would have to ultimately get warrants on the guy that was smuggling cash, right? And I'd have to fly across the country and go put cuffs on him, and turn them into the marshals. But that was back in the day where you actually had to carry the cash. But now, if you want to move money, mass amounts of money, I'm guessing someone's just going to use cryptocurrency, and send it to a wallet. I mean, because that's untraceable.
Hello. I'd like to talk to you about one of our sponsors. Yeah. Liquid gummies. They are Delta 9 THC. These are strawberry flavored. I just ate one. I'm not gonna eat another one. They're kind of strong. These are awesome. Get you some. Link in the description, or Google liquid gummies, or go to Leaf, New York. I mean, they sell them there too. Get some of these if you're of age and whatever laws in your land, follow them. But these are legal THC ones. So I mean, these are federally legal. So you're not worried about the feds when you're getting messed up or whatever. I don't know what you're worried about, but sometimes that's the concern. These are delicious. They're awesome. And I am proud to say they are a sponsor of the Anthony Rogers Show.
Yeah, I feel like this IP address. If I was a criminal, I wouldn't use anything digital. I feel like, but like it'd be the worst time to be a criminal ever. I couldn't even imagine being a criminal today. Like you'd have to do so much shit. Like I don't even know how you can get away with it today. Everything's so monitored, man. Like.
Yeah, it is monitored, but man, you can still, go use a hard wallet and literally just confirm the amount on the hard wallet, hand it to someone else, and you just gave someone $2 million. You know what I mean?
Yeah, damn. Yeah, no, that's true. I never thought about that. That's crazy.
And it's that big versus 80-pound bag of money.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and that's what you have to ship. And if you don't know what you're looking for, I mean, that's you'll never find it.
I know, never. So yeah, the game has to be totally different. Back then, also, what was new is we were using GPS tracking devices, and we would put them in little Pelican cases with magnets on them. We'd slap them on the bottom of a car. Well, one time I was the St. Louis area's largest weed dealer. I mean, he was responsible for hundreds of pounds a week. He found my device. And he drove over the Alton Bridge and threw it in the Mississippi River. So I go to check on it, and I'm like, damn, it's floating down the Mississippi River. And then all of a sudden, it costs money. So like the boss is not happy we lost the device. But I said, wait a minute, boss. The map's showing it's going upriver. So I was like, man, it's got to be on a boat or something, right? So we get in the car and we're looking at the laptop, pinging the location of this device, and sure shit, it's still upriver. We're driving up there, and it's in the lock and dam up by Alton.
That's crazy.
So we go up to the Army Corps engineers and we tell them, hey, keep the lock closed. We have a device inside there that we need to get to. So they put us on a boat. They let us in the lock, even out the water levels, right? And here's a little fishing boat with two guys on it. And here's me and my partner, big guys, wearing plain clothes. And we pull up to them in the lock and dam, boat to boat. We're like, gentlemen, you got a piece of property that belongs to the U.S. government. We'd like it back. And they were scared shitless, man.
That's crazy. Yeah, no, I bet. That's like some X-Files shit like happening to him, you know?
Right.
Just like see people show up, they're like, what?
Yeah, like in the lock and dam, and he's shaking when he's handing it back to me. He's he's like, we just found it floating in the river, and big magnets just, it stuck to the hull of their boat. So they picked it. They didn't know what it was, but they thought it fell out of the sky.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, that's crazy. So a boat picked it up. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's another story that's probably gone around DEA for years. It's I'm always the one creating these stories.
That's how you got into politics, I guess. Like the folklore continues. Like,
but that's part of the reason I got in politics. I mean, it's pretty awesome being on that side and having all that power and the full force of the federal government behind you. But what I discovered, whenever I first turned on that wiretap and I'm listening to people's, like right now, this conversation could be listened to real time.
Oh, I bet it is. No, I bet it. Yeah.
And when I learned that the government has that ability, has that power, I was just like, man, it's freaked me out a little bit. And plus, they were also, that was during the FISA courts. They also had like courts over in the ocean, where there was no jurisdiction, and they were using that court to spy on Americans. And so if I needed information without getting a warrant, I couldn't have it directly. They have a close group of people that there would be like one guy in the St. Louis office that could have access, and then they would relay the information to me if I hit a dead end, and I was just like, man, this is just out of hand. So that's kind of the part of the reason I ran for office. I'm a pretty liberty-minded individual, especially it's just unheard of going from being undercover and fighting the drug war to coming into working in politics. And now, being a liberty-minded guy, trying to get government off people's backs. So it's just come full circle, man.
Well, I think it just happens with age. You just kind of evolve and into different roles. I think it'll just continue for a guy if you keep working hard. I think it's great. You'll just keep doing awesome shit. If that's that's where your head's at, and that's where your ambition's at. Just keep doing shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in public service now for 20 years, and it is tough, right? Because my family gets drugged through me with it, and I got kids, and I was in DC on January 6th, so that was crazy. I mean, I had 700 freaking threats. I had the media coming after me and just making up crap left and right. No one's reading stories. They only see fake headlines. So I had to deal with that. I got 3 retractions and a public apology from Fox that was ran live for a week. It was just nuts, and anytime you're in public office, you got to kind of deal with that stuff that other people just don't know how it really affects a family. So for someone to stay in politics as long as Joe Biden, I mean, you got to be crazy. You got to absolutely be out of your mind. 60 something years of that guy's been in office.
Well, I think a lot of those guys are blackmailed. Like how you're talking about how the government can listen to everything on our devices. So I think China can. I think multiple people can. I think basically a lot of these older guys got blackmailed super hard because they're just living super shitty lives with a recording device around them. And I think a lot of these guys are blackmailed, man. I think Biden's one of them. I mean, I think a lot of those guys are just. I mean, they just have so much blackmail in these dudes, man. Because their generation didn't even see the surveillance in their pocket coming, man.
Yeah, and then those people that have the dirt, they also have the money, right?
Yeah.
And it makes it easier to keep people in office. It's not easy. It's not easy being a guy like me and winning election after election after election because I got to raise money from normal Joe.
Yeah.
If I were a lobbyist whore, it'd be a lot easier. And honestly, there's something to that because the road less traveled, is just in politics, man, it's too hard. Most people take the easy route and they take the money and they like the lifestyle. They like to stay in office. Man, I want to be a private citizen again one day. I want my kids to have a normal life.
Yeah, I think a lot of these guys is the first time they've ever been cool too. So it just goes to their head and they're easy to manipulate. It's easy.
Absolutely.
They're just oh wow, they never did anything. They've never been anything. Not athlete, not fucking. They never had a pop off. They're just they win an office or something like that. And they're oh wow, I'm so special,
You're absolutely right. This is the greatest thing someone will ever do. And really, honestly, it's not that hard getting elected by 7,000 people, or 50,000 people if you're in Missouri Senate. It's just not that hard. And then when you get there, you think you are somebody.
No, I was in one election and I got second place and I was delusional enough to think I'd win. So I thought it was way easier. It's like like the primary is easy, and then like after that, you're just like, oh, you have to convince all these people that think Republicans are racist to vote racist. It's like a fucking like it's like a what is it I don't know. What's that show? Those four dudes are like friends and they're like trying to do missions or whatever. They're always like, oh yeah, like I forgot what it's called. Like, you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. I wish I had time to watch TV.
Like, I don't even watch TV. No, there's just Impractical Jokers. Impractical Jokers. If you look at Impractical Jokers
great.
episode, like getting people to vote Republican in St. Louis is like Impractical Jokers episode. That's what it feels like. You're just like you're literally like trying to convince these people. You're like, yeah, dude, like you're in a good area. Everybody's Republican out there. Like I'm like your district. I mean, you got a good district. You just got to win your primary. Yeah, but here's what happens though, man. Because if you go in St. Louis City and you have a heart-to-heart conversation with somebody in North City that, you know, they hate their kids' schools, they know their kids aren't going to have a chance to get out of there, they hate the crime that they have to live with. You know what? They would vote Republican all day, every day. They agree with the policies. They do. They vote against their interests. They think Republicans are racist, and that's all they think.
Yes,
they don't know anything else.
But it's not even that. They're afraid to go against the grain. They don't want to be an Uncle Tom. You know, they're so scared of what their community will do to them. And I feel so sorry because there are I mean, we have great policies that we've been fighting for that would save so many people out of St. Louis City, but they just don't care enough. I mean, they care about the Democratic Party's the future, you know.
Yeah, the pendulum needs to swing back and forth. It needs to go back and forth. Because I think there's Democrats with hearts in the right spot out here, but most of them are radicalized. Most of them are radicalized, though. Like it seems like,
you know, like they would argue that we're radicalized too, right?
I think I'm just normal. I think like to where like I'm just like a dude who like the Republican values like tend to like stick to what I like grew up around and stuff maybe or something. But like I just feel like they're like the ones burning down buildings. I'm just kind of like, what? Right. I mean, it's just like I feel like that's way more radical than like I don't know, existing.
Well, my father is a hardcore Democrat.
Well, how old is he?
And he's 76.
His generation had good Democrats though. Like I think those older guys. I mean, it makes sense more.
Yeah, but I used to be able to have conversations about this with them and say, Dad, the Democrat Party is not what it used to be. You know, now my dad's like literally fighting for Marxism.
They all are, man.
You know, and he doesn't even know it. He didn't see the progression, but man, he's constantly programmed every day. He sits in front of that TV and watches CNN all day, every day. And I'm just like, turn off your TV and let's talk in 2 weeks. You know, it's almost that bad where you have to unplug and wait that long to just let shit get out of your head that you know they're programming you to watch. It's nuts.
No, yeah, and it's like disinformation now. It's all just like everyone's watching a different media bubble. You know, like everyone's got like there's so many different platforms and shows and options and videos and audio and like all this stuff. So like everybody's in their own world, and that's where and they view the world differently. And I think that's a lot of the problem, probably. Yeah, and in the speed of information nowadays, man, it goes so fast. The damage is done. Right? Yeah. I mean, in a matter of minutes, especially somebody like you that has 1 million followers, you know, you have a lot of influence. You can post one thing and it's in front of so many people. It's hard to bring it back, right? It used to be a lot easier, man. It used to be like like before they started deleting people like that were funny. Like they used to let us just run and shit. It used to be way more fun, man. Like now it's just like you say they're wrong. I called somebody a retard and like they delete my Twitter. You know, it's like what the fuck, like. It's just like it's nuts, man. I did the same thing. I left Twitter. I was like, this is stupid. You don't even know who's who. You can be totally anonymous. I can make 10 Twitter handles and there are just too many bots and stuff. So yeah, I just kind of keep it on 2 platforms right now. That's all right. Yeah, I think that's where your market's on Facebook. I mean, your voters are on Facebook probably, and Instagram. I mean, I think it's new too. I mean, I think that's good too. But I mean, all your voters are on Facebook for sure. Absolutely. It's the demographic, right? It's the voting demographic, man. Yeah. But I would love to have been an undercover cop on Facebook right now because, you know, Facebook actually told law enforcement to stop using them as a tool to go after people. because law enforcement I think it was out in California, law enforcement was setting up fake identities on Facebook, which violates their terms of service, right? Yeah. And to basically go after people. So no, I mean, it's probably easy. Almost these people just brag. I mean, like a lot of those guys, all those guys probably were poor as fuck and started making money, and they're like, oh, look how much money I have. I'm a 1,000 there now, you know? And then fucking
thousandaire.
That's what all those guys are. There's like poor kids, like TV made it, like they just imitated their favorite rapper and thought that like that's what life was, but they didn't realize the consequences in that, and like how like gangster rap's probably just a commercial for the privatized prison system. Like, I mean, like realistically, it's like if you mimic that, I mean, that's where you end up, really, you know. It's like weird.
Yeah.
Gentleman from St. Charles County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also have a point of personal privilege.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you. You know, I've never been lost for words, but the last couple of days, it really has hit me kind of hard, and I'm like, what the heck am I going to say? A lot of you are texting and calling saying, I cannot wait for your last speech. I cannot wait to find out who you are going to nail. But, you know, it's been fun. Two funny things happened. A good for all of you, you know, a good way to start a speech, especially one going out, is tell a joke or two. Two funny things happened this week. I parked in the garage without my placard hanging on my rearview mirror. I was laughed my butt off as I did it. And a convicted felon who proclaims to be a journalist said that I wasn't a statesman. That made me really laugh. You know, Mr. Speaker, one thing I learned over the last 7 years, because, you know, this is my last day in the Missouri legislature, and what an honor. But the last couple of years especially, it really opened my eyes to the magnifying glass that's on this building and on this crowd. And who holds the magnifying glass? Because, you know, people outside this building, they think we really hate each other's guts. Across the aisle. They really think. Now, there's some, I gotta admit, some of you I don't like. But I would save you from a burning building. Some of you on the other side of the aisle, we've had to hide our friendships. You know, so we are a little guilty of what's been going on the last couple of years. But it's important to remember who holds that magnifying glass, and that magnifying glass is the media. And when I gave my official press release on my impending resignation, I didn't talk to a soul. I simply sent that out. And Mr. Speakers and my fellow members, my colleagues, I would venture to guess there were at least 10 different headlines that had no ounce of truth in them. And they're on the internet. One made me laugh. It was from Newsweek. Can you believe that? A lowly state rep from Missouri caught the eye of Newsweek? So that journalist, I had to email that journalist because her headline said, just 1 year into his job, he resigned. And so I looked her up and I said, you know, and I saw she was recently a student. And I said, hey, listen, I know we're in the clickbait era. I know a really important headline is going to get you views. But a lot of people don't read stories anymore, Mr. Speaker, and especially journalists don't investigate anymore. And I really want to see that change because it's really causing a great divide in this nation. You know, I'm a little heartbroken today because, you know, as I leave, as I depart, there's a friend here, there's a friend not here, that I really wanted to let everyone know, come out of the closet, that I'm friends with. One of probably the least recognizable friendship on this floor. And I'd hate to throw him under the bus because it could really hurt him in among his colleagues. But Representative Meredith, he and I have had some really heartfelt discussions back and forth about our families, about policy, about our dedication to public office, and unfortunately he's sick, and hopefully he's listening, but I really appreciate his friendship. The lady from St. Louis County came and gave me a hug before we got on this floor today. I really appreciate her friendship. When I was injured, her and her husband helped carry me off the field last year when I tore a calf muscle. She drove me all the way home in like one of the most torrential downpours, driving my gas-guzzling vehicle. The whole time I couldn't help but laugh that she's driving like a vehicle gets 8 miles to the gallon. And I know that was bothering her, but I really appreciate you. I really appreciate everybody in here. We have a lot of differences. You know, I was one of the leaders of the Conservative Caucus, and I know I really got on a lot of people's nerves. Because, you know, when I came up here, I didn't come up here to make friends. I really didn't. I told myself I wasn't going to do it, but I failed. That's hard for me to accept, failure. I made some really good friends up here. Everybody on this floor will leave others with an impression. Good, bad, or indifferent, we all change each other's lives. You have all changed mine. I have laughed at you. I've laughed with you. I've argued with you. We've gone neck to neck. I mean, it's just been a crazy time, but what an honor to serve in this building. I don't want anybody to think that because, yes, opportunities change in our lives, and I'm going to be relocating to another state that has no income tax, or a state that has educational freedom, where that state's going to give me $40,000 for my kids to choose the school they get to go to, and a state where workers aren't compelled to join a union. And it breaks my heart because I really fought for that here. 1 out of 3 ain't bad, though, Mr. Speaker. Last year, when we passed the ESAs, that was the pivotal moment of my legislative career. And it wasn't even my bill. But I loved the charade we had to play to get it done over in that awful Senate. Because that's really, people don't understand, looking under this microscope or this magnifying glass, that's really how things happen here. We have so many special interests in this building that when it's time to make law for people in this state to change their lives for the better, we have to put on charades. And we did it last year. One of the most proudest moments, man. I remember giving hugs after that. I mean, it was just incredible. And I can only pray to God that the Supreme Court doesn't legislate it away. Because if there's one issue that we need to fix in this state, it's that super legislature across the road. And unfortunately, we're term limited. And I'm guilty. I am guilty of term limits. I voted for term limits. And it's the one vote I wish I could take back as a citizen of this state, because the people term limited themselves. They're not term limited over there. They're not term limited up there. The people are term limited. And that's how bad policies like prescription drug monitoring gets done. And deaths across the state go sky high because they can't get their medicine, so they go to fentanyl. We've had that argument. But the reason that passed is because of term limits, because a fourth of this body had no clue for the last 7 years of the testimony and the trials we went through to prove that policy. Term limits are killing people in this state, literally. But back to the courts. If we don't undo that, Mr. Speaker, we'll never have voter ID. We passed it here. We made a law for voter ID, and the super legislature across the street said, oh, it's unconstitutional. While in other states, it's not. And we have voter fraud issues in this state. I just got word from my Secretary of State that even in my own county, there are 2 cases where somebody voted in St. Charles County and in the state of Florida, the same person. Now, it's a rumor, I haven't confirmed this, that the St. Charles County prosecuting attorney isn't going to prosecute that, and I won't believe it until I hear it from him. But if that's the case, then what are we here for if we can't even verify our voters in this state? And Medicaid expansion. We passed a law here on Medicaid expansion. We didn't want it, right? So they go to the initiative petition process and go around this legislature. And I know my friends on the other side of the aisle don't agree with this, and that's okay. But it's my parting speech, not theirs. The initiative petition process is a constitutional crisis. The people are always going to vote for things that sound good. But they're not down here listening to the special interests that are funding those initiative petition processes. Like we're literally having special interests write laws that benefit themselves, and they propose it to the voters of the state and say, look, wouldn't this be good? And we are elected to stop stuff like that. How can we stop it if we have such a low bar to allow special interests to change our Constitution? I mean, put it right there in the chapter next to bingo, for crying out loud. Anyway, I would bring up right to work, Mr. Speaker, but I mean, that's a foregone conclusion right now. I really need to talk about the big thing the media has been waiting. What's the big, scary thing that he's really resigning for? You know, what's the secret? Well, the secret is right behind me. These 4 boys and my wife. That's the big secret of why I'm resigning. Because after 20 years in public service, sometimes you have to put others first. And last fall, I realized that, you know, it's been about me and my family for the last 20 years. I got so drunk on being a policeman and public service, and sometimes you got to stop and say, listen, what have I put these people through? You know as well as I do, like, this is not an easy job. I was undercover buying heroin, for crying out loud, in St. Louis City. I mean, I've been near death several times. This is a more dangerous job, if you ask me, because any day of the week could just go foul, and you have to get your family out of your house because of 700 death threats. You know, they've been through a lot. And so I realized this fall, you know, it's time. There's nothing I can do this session that's going to help. Literally, I've laid it all on this floor, and I think everyone would agree with that. I've fought for everything that I've believed in. I've done everything I said I'd do. And I just want to show these boys right here that mean the most to me in the world. That sometimes you got to know when to fold them, right? And the timing's perfect. So I got to tell you, my wife, they don't remember me as a policeman, but my wife does. You know, those 4 a.m. Phone calls, you know, where she was just praying it wasn't someone else calling her that I wasn't coming home, but it was me saying, hey, I'm going to be late again. I got to go put evidence in the locker before I come home. And then leaving January to May. This is quite a sacrifice. So, thank you. Those are some awesome boys. And I've had 3 assistants over the last 4 years. I know I'm getting on my time limit, but y'all are still listening. 3 assistants over the last 3 years, and they've all been great. And the one I'm probably most proud of is the Ukrainian national that I hired to be the first foreign LA in the building. He's done a great job. You know, his English wasn't the greatest. Sometimes I get phone calls in my office and they'd think they called Russia. And this was right around Russian collusion. And so it was kind of funny. We laughed about it a little bit, but I said, no, listen, you got to improve your English. I mean, so I sent him to English classes, Mr. Speaker, and he didn't complain one bit. He loved every minute of it. He loves being up here. He's the first and only, I guarantee it, Igor that works for the state of Missouri. But I owed a debt of gratitude for you, Igor. You've been a wonderful sidekick, very, very loyal, and that matters a lot in this building. He's going to stick around for a while, so you guys, maybe he can bust some knees for you guys. That was a joke. Anyway, it's been an honor, guys. I truly am going to miss you all. I know I'll see you again. Mr. Speaker, we came in together, and I'm beating you out. So I'd just like to stay a couple steps ahead of you. I am term limiting myself. We don't need term limits. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, gentlemen.